All right, so today we're going to take our canvas and we're going to be making a lighthouse painting using acrylic paint. To do that, we're going to first start by drawing a sketch of our lighthouse so that we know where they are. Now, I gave you lots of different lighthouse paintings that you can look at, but I'm going to use a pencil and a ruler just so I have my sides a little straighter, and I'm going to draw the architecture of a lighthouse. So you can see here on a lighthouse, lighthouses are a little wider on the bottom and a little skinnier on the top, and usually they're kind of cylinder-like. At the bottom, I'm going to draw a little happy face over here just to give it that three-dimensional look. At the top, I'm also going to give it the little happy face, but I'm going to make it a little wider because there's usually a little balcony up there that the lighthouse keeper would walk around on at one time, and right now, since most of them are museums, this is where the people get to the top and then they can walk around to see as far as they can see. Above that little balcony is the light itself, so I'm going to put some little lines here and I'm going to give it a little cap. You can put a little flag or something on it later on. You can add doors and windows later on. Here's a little window. Okay, and then I'm also going to add that this lighthouse happens to be on land, so I'm going to put just a little line back here to show where I'm going to start my land. I'm also going to have water. The water is not going to have those little water lines that you guys sometimes put in your paintings. I'm actually just going to put more of a straight line just for the horizon because you can't see the waves that far away, and then the rest is going to be my sky. For your sky, you can make your sky a blue sky, a sunset sky, or any kind of sky that you want. So I'm going to actually use some warm colors like orange, red, and yellow, and I'm going to make, I have a little bit of burgundy here too, so I'm going to make a sunny sky here. So on my little paper plate, so that I have something, I'm going to put a little dollop, just a little bit, because you can't get the acrylic paint back into the tube, so it's better to start with less and add more later than it is to add too much and waste it and have to throw it away and waste your acrylic paint. So there's a little dollop of yellow. Here's a little of this burgundy color. Okay, here we are. And so the first thing I'm going to start off with is I'm going to kind of do the sky, the background, almost like a wash. And I'm going to need a bigger brush and your paper towel for that. So here's a paper towel. I'm gonna just dry my brush off a little bit here. And I'm gonna put the colors in where I think they should be. Let me make sure that there's no paint on my brush from the last painting that I was working on. Okay, so, and I'll actually get to new water here so I make sure that my water is nice and clean. Okay, so now I'm going to start with my yellow here, and I'm gonna make a sunset sky. So I'm gonna put my yellow towards the bottom like the sun had set already. And I'm just making kind of like a rainbow stripe down here. For now, this part you want to really do quite fast. You don't want to let the paint dry. So I'm going to wash that off a little bit, and now I'm going to dry off my brush a little bit, and now I'm going to start with a red or an orangey color, and I'm going to put another stripe here a little farther away from my yellow stripe. It's going to look a little funny at first. I'm going to mix a little bit of this red and this burgundy together and make a new color so it's a little darker. You can see it's a little darker than this other color because I put a little burgundy in there. I'm going to make another stripe. This is a little redder up here, and I'm going to put a little purple at the top here. Okay, this purplish burgundy color towards the top, so it looks like stripes right now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to blend this all together. So I'm going to wash my brush off really well. I'm going to dry my brush off really well, and I did this very fast. I'm going to add a tiny bit of water to my paintbrush so I can kind of pick up this yellow here, and I'm going to kind of scrub it into the canvas and spread it out right into this next color. And when it joins the next color, it's going to mix and it's going to make kind of a gradation. So let them mix, let them touch, still make sure the yellow's showing, but let them kind of blend together. I'm going to go further up, and now I'm going to pick up more of this orange, and I'm going to go up higher, and I am going to scrub it in till I get to this reddish color, and I'm going to let these two colors merge together. And then I'm going to let that reddish color merge into this burgundy. I need a little more water. This is why you have to do this really fast, because you don't want this paint to dry. And I'll let this purplish burgundy color, you can even go into blue at the top here if you want, like a dark blue, as if the night sky is really crawling in quick. So here we go. So I just have those basic colors on here for now, and it's pretty wet. I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side, so it's the same on both sides. Wash my brush off, get all that red off, a little bit of water, take this yellow while it's still wet, move it up along my lighthouse into the orange, let the orange and the yellow merge together. I'm gonna move it up a little further, move it up till it meets this reddish color, and I'm gonna let those two colors merge together a little bit. If I need any more of these colors, I can always add more of the color to here, and with the wet brush it'll just kind of blend. Okay, and I'm gonna go all the way up here to this burgundy, and I'm going to let those two colors merge together. I'm painting the whole canvas. I don't want to leave any white space there. So even on your edges, you can turn and you can paint some of your edges if you'd like, so that your edges look nice. You can even do that later if you prefer, but I like to do it while I'm working on this so that I don't have to worry about it later on. So, and when you make nice edges on your canvas, you don't have to worry about a frame, because the nice edges will show outside the edges, so instead. Okay, so there's a little bit, I'm gonna get a little yellow in here and then move it up into the reds on this side too. All right, just so I have some nice painted edges, okay, that you can see a little bit better from here. Okay, so now I'm gonna dry my brush off, wash my brush and dry my brush off. And I wanna get some of this extra water off so it dries a little quicker. Don't worry about if you're, paint went across your lighthouse, you're gonna paint that area anyway. And I'm just gonna kind of smooth it out a little bit. So I'm just taking it, I'm dragging the brush across. It's as dry as I can make it, and you can see I'm getting this beautiful gradation going on there. Do the same thing to the other side. Oops, I have to wash my brush off. Got a little pink down there. That's okay. We'll just add a little yellow, and it'll just kind of fade away. The sky is never one color anyway, so if you have multiple colors in a certain spot, don't worry about it. Our eye reads sky and color like a computer, so it's all good. There we go. But it just smooths it out a little bit so that you have this nice subtle sky color here. There we go. And we got a little more yellow over there too. Okay, so pulled that paint across and right off the paint that I scrubbed on before. Okay, so now I'm ready for my water, and for my water I'm going to be using some cool colors. Let me get another paper towel here so I have it ready. And so on my palette I'm going to use some blue. Here's a dark blue. I'm going to use a lighter blue. I can use a little purple. I can use a little green. A little purple. A little green. The more colors the better, because the sky usually reflects on the ocean, and that's what makes it look blue. It's just a reflection of the sky, and it does have a little green tinge to begin with, so I'm going to put a little green on here too, because that way it gets some of that beautiful teal, especially if you're in Florida. You see a lot of teal water. So anyway, so we are going to take those colors, and I'm going to take my big brush and I'll wash it off, making sure it's ready to go. It doesn't have any yellow in it, which mine does a little bit. You may have to change your water. So I'm going to take a little mixture. I'm going to put a little blue on my brush, a little dark blue, tiny bit of purple. I'm going to mix them together, make a new color, but I'm not going to mix them all the way, because I actually want some of those colors to get on there the way they are right on the brush. So I'm actually not going to mix them all together yet, but instead I'm just going to drag those colors across so those colors kind of get on my water area and sort of make their own little mini gradation. You do this a lot in toll painting. It's a type of painting where you actually load your brush off with multiple colors and paint and get this kind of tie-dye look when you're done with it. Okay, again, you can put a little bit of water on here and spread this out a little bit so it's smoother. There we go. Oh, that's beautiful. There it is. Look at all those greens and blues in there. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. A little blue, a little purple, a little green. Okay, and a little light blue I have. I'm going to just throw this in here from the lighthouse out. That's why I like a flat brush, because I can get those nice sharp edges on the edges of something. Okay, so there's the rest of the water on this side. Again, I can paint the side of my canvas so that the edges look nice as well. Okay, I'll do the same thing on the other side while I still have this color on here. And you can scrub your canvas because it's what it's meant to do. So, okay, so and then a little bit of water, and I'm just going to smooth this side of the water out a little bit. So, let's see, let's make that, don't worry about that. If it went into the lighthouse a little bit, I'm going to paint that little lighthouse edge anyway. But if it bothers me too much while it's still wet and with my brush, with just plain water, I can actually just pick it up and clean it up a little bit. There we are. Gone. Okay, so now I'm going to do my grass, and for my grass I'm going to use more green and less of the blues. I can even put a little brown in there. If it's sand, I'm going to mix whites with a little bit of brown. Maybe put a little orange in there for sand. Mix that up with a lot of white, and you'll get some lovely sand color. But I'm going to use like these different greens. I'll put a little bit of blue in there too. Just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of interest. And I'm going to drag that across as well, but it's going to be mostly grass, so we want to have mostly green in here. So, there we go. And I'm going to cover this whole bottom area with the grass color, so that the only thing that has the canvas showing is my lighthouse. And later on you can add things like sailboats and, you know, fish, dolphins jumping out of the water. You can add a light coming from the lighthouse if it's a nighttime picture. Okay, and you can see that ray of light coming from it. That's fine. Okay, so I can add a little water to this too if I want to smooth it out a little bit. Okay, get a little bit of water on there. If it's too wet, you can take a real dry brush and you can smooth it across as well. Get some of that water off. It'll pick it up kind of like a little bit of a sponge. There we go. All right. Okay, so there is some grass here. There's some water and there's some sky. And now I'm ready for my lighthouse itself. My lighthouse I'm going to use, I'm going to make it like Barnegat Lighthouse. So I'm going to make the top. It's going to be a reddish color, and I'm going to use a little bit of this dark burgundy because I don't want it to match the sky too much. Since I made a red sky, I don't want it to match. So this is the Barnegat Lighthouse in Long Beach Island, New Jersey. It actually does have grass around it. The windows aren't accurate though, so I'm going to paint actually over the window because I can paint them back in later. I can see through the paint enough. But the Barnegat Lighthouse in New Jersey has a red top and a white bottom. Every lighthouse has different designs on it, and at one time that told the people with ships, boats, where they were. You know, they didn't have all the high-tech maps we have today, so they had to kind of look at the lighthouse and go, oh, I'm in Barnegat, New Jersey. I guess I have to go north if I want to go to Sandy Hook. And the Sandy Hook Lighthouse looks different than the Barnegat Lighthouse, and as does all the lighthouses all across the world. All have a slightly different look, and the ship owners would certainly know those landmarks and know exactly where they were. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow on here, and my shadows I usually like to use blue or purple for. I don't usually like to use black for my shadows, so this is like a purplish color. I'm going to with a little blue. You can make it a little red violet if you don't want it to be too dark, but I don't mind it being a little dark because I'm just going to do it a little bit on the edge with a little bit of wet brush, and that's going to give your lighthouse a little bit of a rounder look to it. Like there's a little shadow because the sunlight can only be on really one side of it, and it might look a little darker. If it's too dark or you don't like the way it looks, put a little more red on it or add a little water to just kind of blend it away a little bit. Okay. There we go. I'm going to put a little red if I want to make it a little redder. And again, if it's too wet, just take a dry brush, dry your brush off, and just pick up some of that water Don't pick too much up because you're going to expose too much of your canvas and then you lose your color. So, but if you feel like your shadows are just a little too much right now, then you can always go back and put them in more later on. Okay, so there is just the top. I'm going to make that a little redder. Barnacle Lighthouse is pretty red. It's not that burgundy, so I'm going to put a little more of this orangey red in here just to brighten it up a little bit. There we go. It'll mix with these other colors, and I know it'll give me a nice reddier red. Okay, so I'm going to do the bottom in white because in the Barnacle Lighthouse, the bottom of the lighthouse happens to be white, so I have some white paint here. I'm going to need to make sure that my brush is really, really clean, or even better yet, start with a new brush for that section with some clean water, and that way you know you don't mix those colors because now you might say, well, the canvas is already white. Well, the canvas has a little texture to it, and by putting paint on top of the canvas, even if it's white on white, it gives it a little bit of a, you see those little paint lines a little more, and it gives it a little more of a finished look. So even though it's already white, I still paint white on top of it just to get those little lines out. Also, it's easier to put your shadows in later on if you're going to do a little shadowing on the edges. Gives it a cleaner look. Again, it looks finished when you put white on white. So okay, so there's my white paint on the bottom of Barnacle Lighthouse. I'm going to use a little bit of the white paint while I'm using it for the top. I don't think the top on Barnacle Lighthouse is actually pointy, but in my picture it is, and when you're the artist you can change whatever you want on your paintings to make it the way you want it to look. Artistic freedom. Okay, so there's a little white on the top of my house here too, my lighthouse. All right, with the white still in my brush, I'm going to add a little bit of the darker blue, tiny bit, tiny bit, and then I'm going to add a little bit of this shadowing here, and then I'm going to blend it in a little bit so it gives a little bit of a shadow. It's going to turn into almost like a little bit of a lavender, but it'll look like a little shadow here, like again, like the sunlight can't quite reach that section. Makes things look round, very subtle. You don't want it to be real dark. You want it just to be subtle enough that you say, huh, that's a round object, not a flat object. Because, you know, architecture is round, as it takes up space in real life. All right, so now I'm gonna put in some other stuff here. So maybe I'll mix some of the white with a little bit of black and make myself a nice little gray. And whatever gray that you choose to use. Maybe I'll make this little banister area a little bit gray. So I'm going to make this area maybe a little gray. If you let your paint dry, you can actually paint over top of it. So if you make any mistakes, you can always paint on top of it and make those mistakes kind of go away. My detail work I'll do later when I'm done with when everything's pretty dry. I'm going to make my light area maybe yellow. Again, artistic freedom. You can make it whatever color you want. So I'm going to use some of this yellow, straight up yellow, and I'm just going to paint this area yellow just to make it kind of pop, make it show up a little better. Be careful when you're painting wet paint next to wet paint because sometimes they start merging together if they're very wet. Okay, so there's my lighthouse so far. So maybe with a smaller brush, now I'm going to put in a little detail work here. So maybe there's a little window here. I'm using a dark blue here, but you can use blue and black together to get that dark blue. Okay, so maybe it has a little ledge. There's a little ledge for my window. And maybe there's a little door down here. Use that dark navy blue I'm using. You can put black in there too. You can use black if you want. Artistic freedom. Okay, and there's a little round top door or doorway. I don't have to put a doorknob on it. Maybe the door's open and the door opens up towards the inside of the lighthouse. Now inside the lighthouse is a big spiral staircase. You have to have a lot of energy to go all the way up those stairs to get to the top. So there's areas that you can take breaks on, little side rooms in the Barnacle Lighthouse that have like information and history that you learn about, and a lot of people do that. So I'm going to add some more details to this now. So maybe I will actually tackle some of my black paint over here. And I'm gonna use my brush and get some of that stuff off. I'm gonna put some little details in here. And maybe there are little lines on the light part of the lighthouse. So I'm just gonna give it some light lines, almost like curved tic-tac-toe board. Okay. Maybe we use some of this leftover to put a little shadow here, a little shadow here. The sides of this thing a little bit, just to put a little detail in there. Where the sun might be hitting it. I'm gonna put a little flagpole up here because I can. Maybe along the horizon I have a little distant sailboat, and since it's a silhouette, maybe I can't see a lot of the sailboat because it is a silhouette, meaning that you can only see the shadow version of it. You can't see a whole lot of details because there's too much backlighting behind it. So we may not be able to see the people in it. We might not be able to see what the boat's name is or the colors of the boat. All we can see is really the outline of the boat and the actual boat itself and the sail maybe. So maybe there's a little person over here. There he is. He's driving the boat all by himself on the water right along the horizon during a sunset. How lovely. Okay, so I'm gonna mix, I think I'm gonna mix a little bit of a sand color just to show you how to mix sand. To mix a sand color, you're gonna need a little bit of yellow or brown. I'm gonna use this kind of a muddy yellow orange here, and I'm going to mix it with my white a little bit, and I'm going to lighten it up a little bit, make kind of a sand color, make a little sand trail. So maybe in my grass there's a little sandy trail that leads you right to the door of the lighthouse when you want to visit as a visitor. So there we go. Put some little details in there so that you can do it, and I can't wait to see what kind of things you add. Flowers and bushes and rocks, all kinds of things. You can add some seagulls in the sky. They can be a little silhouette too. They can be kind of like an M bird a little bit, but a little less Emmy. Just kind of give them a little bit of a curved V. So maybe there's some seagulls flying by this lighthouse. So here you go. There are little seagulls up there, just to show that there's some interesting things going on. There might be some clouds in the sky. If it's a sunset sky, you're going to put a little bit of orange in those clouds, or you can just keep it the way it is. So, and add as many details as you need to in order to make your little edge to my water here. Clean it up a little bit. Okay, make your lighthouse your lighthouse. Make it the way you'd like it to look. All right, so that is our lighthouse project on canvas today. And I didn't finish my edges yet, but I'll get to those later. All right, so there it is.